When it comes to talking about vehicles which I think have a good chance of coming back from the GT6 days, this is one which I've talked about, it seems quite a lot recently, especially with, of course, the older shaped Civic coming to Gran Turismo 7. This is a vehicle which I've seen more than a few of you recently kind of move into the, what I would call new Mitsubishi Evo phase, or the new Lexus LFA phase, kind of in GT7 of, wherein the JDM community kind of fixates on one or two cars that they really want to see back, and then when that one is added, it will kind of shift to something else. So it was a Lexus LFA, which of course isn't JDM, but you know what I mean. Then it will go to like an Evo 9, then an Evo 8, and now it's kind of shifted into more so stuff like a DC5 Integra, which I definitely agree with, maybe a Mitsubishi FTO, again, agree there, and certainly with this one. Now I personally think it would be pretty nice if they were to bring this back, because of course we feature vehicles in this returning series because I think they actually do have a good chance of coming back, or at least a moderate one. This one, it was already a premium, it already had visual upgrades, and in terms of performance, well, it's a Type R Honda, so to some degree you know it's going to be good. It's all just kind of peaks and valleys of how great they are, and this could be a pretty cool companion piece, although I don't really know if they would do this, if they ever decided to debut the FN2 Civic in the Gran Turismo series. It seems to be a little bit of the ugly duckling of the Civic line. I don't see quite as much love for it, and I have of course reviewed both the FN2 and the FD2 in real life, so I do have a bit of perspective on Type R Civics when it comes to these two specifically. In fact, I'll probably reference some of that, and incidentally, if you want to check out that real life review and compare it to here in the game, it'll be a bit jarring because I was a hell of a chungus back then, but aside from that, it was very cool to get the chance to drive a car like this. Now in the game, it's mostly just referred to as a 2008 Civic. It is of course here in the UK what we would call more so an import Civic. It was never, as far as I know, officially sold here. It's the FD2 instead of the FN2, and for those who are unfamiliar, the FN2 is one of the only Civics really which has never been featured in Gran Turismo. It's known as being kind of the Euro Civic with that sort of glass looking grille, the UFO looking Civic if you will. It's kind of rounded and a bit softer, and it's got the Mugen version with the bigger rear wing, all that kind of stuff. I love the idea of Type Rs with 4 doors. My absolute dream JDM car is a 4-door Integra, which is ultra rare in its own right, called the DB8, which is essentially a 4-door version of a DC2. Of course I'm going to love something like this, and even in terms of performance, it is categorically better because it's already a more powerful car. You're looking at 221 horses, the torque isn't exactly high, but it's a Type R with a VTEC, so of course not, 160 or just under foot-pounds of torque. The weight though is pretty good. It's basically like Mitsubishi Evo kind of territory at 1270 kilos, which for a 4-door Saloon certainly isn't bad, and the price tag, as you would guess, especially in a slightly older Gran Turismo game, is dirt cheap. It's 28 grand. There would be a reasonable chance, this is Gran Turismo though, so you never know, of if this were to return, it not being too crazy on price. And being a 2008, it might even be a vehicle which is available in the main dealer. In fact, I think they almost certainly would do that. You'd probably end up with a used version as well, kind of like with the Evos and the Imprezas, but I could definitely see this being in just the normal, straightforward Honda dealership. In terms of its chances, and if it were to return, how good it would be, well, to speak to the first part of that first, I think it has a very good chance. I think this vehicle definitely has its fans. Honda Type R models have always been a strong part of Gran Turismo. They're just consistently good cars for basically every category. What should you expect from the car? Well, the funny thing about the FD2 is, although we of course didn't know this at the time really, it was more of a nod to things to come than we realised. Because if you look at the Civic now, they're kind of all like this. They all feel like what would have been a JDM import, but they're sold here anyway. So they're basically like 4-door hatchback saloons to begin with. And this car was almost ahead of the curve. So you've got this, for the most part, Japanese market version, which has now basically become the norm. I would personally love to see this car back. Another reason why I would is because you could do a pretty good version of the Mugen, which was the concept in real life. I believe that might have even been called the Double R, which inspired the version that I did on the Civic, which is still, as I've said before, one of my favourite special projects. So yeah, I would definitely love to see it come back. The DC2, or more so the DB8, and this one are probably two of my favourite Hondas, I would say, in terms of ones that I would actually want to own and live with. This one definitely nowhere near the Integra, and if it were brought back, well, in terms of what's already in the game, I don't really know what I might liken it to. Sports saloons we've got a few of, but front-wheel drive of course gives it a bit of a different profile, which is another nice advantage of having it in the game, because you get to have something which is kind of different to what we've already got, with the only other similarities being, for the most part, at least that I can think of off the top of my head, a few other Hondas. In the older games, a fantastic rival to this would have been something like the Dodge SRT4 version of the Neon, which is actually really well matched against it, but I don't see that car coming back anytime soon. This one to me would not at all surprise me, either if it were to come back in an update in this game, or my bet is actually going to go on it being a day one vehicle in the next game. This I could easily see being the kind of car where you log into GT8, if you will, look in the dealership, and it's already there. Kind of like how they did with a few other cars, which have been quietly updated to premium in Gran Turismo 7 day one. So that's it for my thoughts on its chances and how they might do it. If you used to use it back in the days of GT6, for example, was it one of your favourites? And of course we'll have to see in future whether or not it comes back. But I'll see you next time with more GT6, and of course mostly more GT7, and thanks for watching.